All right, welcome back to the Minutemen Initiative. We've got a really good episode today. We had the opportunity to have on CR2 or CR squared shooting solutions. So Chris Rance and Chris Roberts. Some of you might recognize Chris Roberts. He came on our podcast a little while ago to talk about precision rifle. And now we get both of them to come on and kind of break down the light fighter concept and more specifically talk about the course that they offer, which is the light fighter course. So we talk about a lot in this episode. We get into some precision marksmanship stuff. We talk about comms, SDR, drones, sustainment basics, everything from there and in between. So it's a short and sweet episode, but there's a lot of really good, valuable nuggets in here that you can kind of branch off from and do your own homework. So definitely check it out and make sure you check out CR2 Shooting Solutions. Enjoy the episode. All right, here we go. We're going to get locked in and get started with CR2 Shooting Solutions. And today we have Chris and Chris. Welcome to the podcast, guys, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys mind introducing yourselves and kind of maybe talking a little bit about how you guys started the business and all that good, fun, juicy stuff?
So, yeah, Chris and I actually met in 2017 when I came to instruct, or when we came to instruct at the sniper course. And it was kind of funny because Chris just came off of writing the new sniper TC, the new sniper manual, the Bible for snipers in the Army, if you will.
Yeah, nice.
And I actually came over from the new SFAP, the new Security Forces Assistance Brigade. And I honestly hadn't touched a long rifle in quite a few years. That wasn't what I had been focusing on for a while there. And so when I came over to the sniper course, that's not really what I came to Fort Benning to do. And so when Chris and I got teamed up as brand new instructors having to go through our certification, I kind of looked at Chris and was like, hey, man, I'm kind of behind the power curve on a lot of these things and wasn't expecting to be standing here right now. So I'm going to kind of lean heavy on you during the certification because you're a lot more current than I am. And so, he took me under his wing in some ways during our certification and kind of got me spun up on, what was going on, the new stuff, and really, we just kind of hit it off from there. And so we continued on as instructors, under a great mentor, Curtis Spivey. And then when he left, I took over the team because I was the senior and ran the team for a year or so until I got ready to retire. And then Chris took it over. And we did a lot of things together. We went and competed over in Israel and, just became really good friends. And we kind of talked about what we would do after the Army and, CR2 worldwide is kind of became a thing. And our name actually came from Frank Galley of Sniper Side, because we're both CR.
Yep.
And he was tired of referring to all these Chris's because it seemed like everybody was named Chris. So he called us the CR squareds. And that's actually what it means. That's why the T was higher than the CR. But yeah, man, he just he dubbed us that. And so we kind of were like, oh yeah, CR2 worldwide. And the whole time we were at the sniper course, it was kind of a constant battle to kind of get things modernized and kind of work away from some of the dogma that we saw. Because I had been an instructor for quite a few years, actually after I met you, Stephen. And I knew what it was, what being an instructor looked like. And so when I came to be an instructor again, I was like, man, I don't think we're doing things right. Not at least not everything, we're not doing it to the best we could. And Chris coming off of writing the brand new manual was like, well, this isn't current. This isn't current. We're not doing this correctly. This is what doctrine says. And so we kind of made it our mission to kind of write some of those things. And then we kind of kept that concept going, after we got CR2 started was, even in the civilian world, there's a lot of bad information, dogma, and guys selling their names, selling their backgrounds rather than actually providing quality instruction. And that's just kind of was our mission.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
There.
No, yeah. I mean, honestly, when Roberts and I both arrived at the schoolhouse, I think we saw an opportunity to enact some change and some modernization into the actual sniper community. And I think one of the biggest things that we kind of focused on was being rooted in doctrine and not just kind of shooting from the hip, where, I mean, some schools out there and stuff, though, that was kind of the case. And then the next thing we wanted to focus on was building that interoperability with a lot of our NATO partner nations. Because at the end of the day, like today's like modern fight, LISCO type operation, you're shoulder to shoulder with our NATO allies. And that's something that there was a period of time where we kind of lost that relationship with them. So we kind of sat down and some of the other instructors at the schoolhouse, we wanted to rebuild their trust, their relationships, and just to make us more lethal on the battlefield. So it's been quite the journey. I'm actually about a month and a half out from retirement, and then hopefully come June, July timeframe, kind of come on a CR2 full time, and again, truly take it worldwide.
Well, congrats on being so close to retirement. That's a long haul. It takes a special kind of person to stick it out, especially with how political that world can be. So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's my last stint before that was a drill sergeant over at Sand Hill. That's actually where I'm retiring out of. And
oh, really?
Let's just say the last 3 years have been probably some of the best days of my life, but also some of the worst. But again, I think there's a lot of like recruits or a misconception that this generation's weak or whatnot. But
yeah,
I'll tell you what, though, I had some guys that are definitely tuned up, and even like like integrating some of the technologies like FPV drones, communications within like amongst the trainees. A lot of these guys grasp it. I mean, they're very smart individuals, and I think with the right leadership, they will succeed. But again, though, we got to make sure that leadership is not archaic. And I think a lot of guys tend to like live in the past, like, oh, I did it like this back in the day.
Yeah.
And that's fine and dandy. But the reality is there's no one in this current generation, like in the military, that has fought a LISCO type operation. I mean, GWAT was GWAT, but we weren't under persistent surveillance, 24/7.
Right.
We weren't going against, anti-tanks and artillery and whatnot. And, you look at the current war in Ukraine, that's exactly what we see on a day-to-day basis. So we have some big shoes to fill, but I think the next generation of warfighters, they'll do okay.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I think a lot of people have that sounds like kind of a misconception. Or maybe just an assumption, because you see so much of the political side and so much of the kind of nonsense, and everything's a headline now. Everything's a clickbait. So it's good to hear from somebody that's actually actively doing it on the trail too. But
yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was you had a few of those knuckleheads within
right.
your formation, but because you got to figure like infantry OC is 6 months long now. We're now, like when I went through, it was only 14 weeks. So 6 months under the same, roof, so to speak, living in the same bay with the same drill sergeants, it becomes tiresome. And I can see that's where like a lot of the antics start coming into play. But, to any future drill sergeants, all I say is, get down there and just do your best to teach and mentor. Yes, you have to wear the drill sergeant hat, but at some point in time, that hat has to come off. And you have to be a leader, an NCO. So that's just my advice to them.
That's quality right there. That's awesome. Without getting too far off topic, I'm just kind of curious, how much do you think it's changed from like your early GWAT warfighting doctrine to kind of shifting back to a more, yes, technologically advanced, but conventional fighting force? Do you see a lot of that older doctrine kind of coming true in some areas, or is it pretty much shifted to a whole new fighting doctrine?
No, it's even at Sand Hill, they basically dusted off the old doctrinal books in regards to, like, say, trench warfare, and that's what they're teaching the trainees now.
Yep.
So just like everything, at least like in a military life cycle, everything does come full circle. So that's why, again, I've always been a stickler for doctrine because I look at doctrine as a playbook. And you can't, again, if you ever play football, you can't get onto the field and understand what's going on and call the right plays if you don't understand the playbook. Now, that's not saying that you can't call an audible on the line, and I think that's a good leader that can see what's going on and maybe make those last minute adjustments, though. But you just can't line up against the other 11 guys on the field and expect to have success if you don't understand the playbook or doctrine. So that's why I encourage guys that one thing that we can that is readily available and free is information, and definitely be a collector of that information and try to process it to your best of your ability.
Yeah, it really seems like too that it's that strict return to the fundamentals, just the good old classic. Like, I mean, nowadays it seems like level 1 infantryman skills are all the rage, and it's like I remember being a young grunt rolling my eyes at a lot of that stuff. And now it's like, man, you realize, especially in my more mature years, I'm like, man, a lot of that stuff was solid. And it applies to a lot more than, conventional warfighting. So, that's really cool. And obviously you brought up drones. How much has that impacted the modern battle space?
I think as long as you have been living underneath a rock for the past 2 years, you hop on any type of social media platform, your feed's going to be saturated with, drones, be it FPV or your typical VTOL type drones, like your DJI, from payloads, persistent surveillance. Drones are definitely here to stay. I don't think it's a fad. Mm-hmm. And even in the military side of the house, even at Sandhill, drones are now part of the POI. The unfortunate truth, though, is that the U.S. military, we're definitely behind the curve compared to our other counterparts, be it Russia, China. We have quite the hill to climb in regards to kind of meeting them toe to toe in regards to the drone aspect. So that's why I definitely encourage, people that are in the military or even just law-abiding citizens is don't be afraid to, worst case scenario, pick up a controller and download a simulator and just start practicing, because drones, just like, the advent of the technology and AI, it's definitely here to stay, and you don't want to be behind that power curve.
Yeah. Do you think it's more with the on the U.S. side? Do you think it's just we're straight up behind the curve, or do you see like overcomplication? Like I'm curious about, it seems like the U.S. is always like drones, Predator, and like all these crazy technologies, when it seems like some of these other
go ahead. I'll hit one point and I'll pass over Roberts, because I think our greatest downfall is the procurement side of the house. And I think the reason why we haven't adapted or adopted, a more modern approach to drones is because it comes down to contracts. It comes down to the right company having the right bid, a ton of T&E and processes and design, whereas if you look at Ukraine and drones in general, especially FPV drones, it's hobbyist type materials. It's cheap, disposable tech. And the reality is the community in Ukraine, people that support the Ukrainian army, they're the ones that are putting these drones together, from the assembly lines to soldering to programming the flight controllers and then shipping them to the front line to be used for the Lord's work. But you don't have that type of manufacturing ideal or process here in the United States, because we're so fixated on contracts and bids and whatnot. And Roberts' previous job, after he retired from the Army, was exactly that. And I'll kind of pass it over to him, let him kind of talk his piece.
Yeah. So, man, that's the conversation of contracts is a long and convoluted one. But what I would say is that we have requirements that have to be met when a contract is written, and we call them contracts, but really it's called programs of record. Long before a contract is written between a company and the military or Department of Defense or any part of the federal government, a program of record is written, and those programs of record are written off of requirements, and those requirements are informed by documents, and those documents are based off of research. Okay. And the research kind of identifies, well, what are our capability gaps? What are the things that we're deficient in doing? The problem is when we do those studies, when we do that research to determine where it is that we are deficient, we do them years in advance, sometimes decades in advance. Because as you know, the federal government is not a quickly moving apparatus.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes it takes us years upon years to acquire things. Prime example was the newest sniper rifle. I mean, that program of record started well over a decade ago, and then it got canned, and then it was brought back. Now, that being said, if we identify something that we need and we need it now, they absolutely have the ability to go after those things. But typically speaking, it takes a long time. And so we're not always very good at identifying current needs and then applying current solutions to those things. And that's something that is getting better. They have put into place systems that can make that better, and there's systems in place that can put quick solutions in place. The problem is anytime you put a quick solution on, it's just a band-aid. It's a band-aid over a bigger wound. And it doesn't always fix the problem in the long run. And I know that's not the answer anybody's looking for. We'd love to believe that we can just pull out the credit card and say, okay, well, we need FPV drones, so let's buy, a DJI makes the best ones. We'll go buy those ones, and those are the ones we need. Or, in our case, hey, we'll buy them off Alibaba. We'll build them in the freaking back of this, the CR2 innovation lab, and then we'll go out and use them. And it's, for us, it's that easy. Problem is a lot of times those things come with, software on the back end that can compromise things. And so, it just, there's really a lot of second and third order effects. And I don't want to make excuses for the acquisition system, because I think it's very flawed in a lot of ways, but it's not always that easy. And we do get it wrong. I mean, the acquisitions gets it absolutely wrong sometimes, but it's a long drawn out process, and it's not always informed by the most current trends, and that's a problem. That's why your special operations does a lot better with acquisitions. That's why those special people can respond to things quicker, and it's not because they have bigger budgets. A lot of people think it's because they got bigger budgets. Well, they don't. They actually don't have bigger budgets. They have the ability to pull a credit card out and apply it to things faster. The problem is they don't have the ability to sustain those programs. And so where some special operations unit can buy an FPV drone today, as far as the entire Army adopting that as a program isn't necessarily the case, because the Army as a whole, or DoD as a whole, can't just do that. There's laws that are in place. There's certain things that have to be, like, for prime example of this, and I'll just try to keep this short, but we teach communications courses. And we have our light fighter course. We use radio communications, UHF and VHF. Very simple. So does the military. Well, we may be transmitting on very similar frequencies that the military uses, but we're transmitting on those frequencies across radios that come from China. The United States government will not use radios that are sourced from China. Reason being is because there is programming on the back end of those radios that can absolutely compromise the United States government information systems. And so they won't use it. It's a law. So, like, if we want to teach military units or DoD units any of our courses, we can't use those radios. Even if they could talk on the same exact frequencies as a military radio could, we can't. We just can't. And so that kind of leads to where we're at with a lot of our FPV drones. Some of the best technology in FPV drones is in the stuff that you can buy offline from Alibaba or Amazon or any of these things, and it's employing software that, like, they just can't use. And so I know there's ways around it. I know that Chris is dealing with a lot of that technology that maybe there is different workarounds, but like I know, for example, he deals a lot with like those DJI drones, and they have to fence them or whatever they have to do.
Yeah,
they
it's
have
just
to,
like mitigation procedures for them. So, but
yeah, and that's just to even use them.
Yeah,
and that's just to mitigate some of that malware and back end programming that is kind of pre-installed in those things since they're coming from that region.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, with the FPV drones, I mean, if you look at a typical flight controller like an ESC, I mean, I can do all my programming offline. I don't need to be connected to the grid when I'm building out an FPV drone. But again, just given the fact that all of the chips, all the technology does come from China. I mean, we have a few U.S. distribution centers that deals with that, like, with the FPV drone stuff. But it's far and few between. And then just price. I mean, I can go online right now to like AliExpress, get a Speedy F405 V7 stack for $80. I mean, and you just can't beat it. And the quality of that stack is pretty good. So I think total price wise, if I wanted to build out a complete 7-inch or 10-inch drone right now through AliExpress, I'm paying no more than $260.
Wow.
RC, I mean, and again, for yourselves and your listeners, I encourage, go onto AliExpress, go check out RC Dolphin. He sells some phenomenal 7-inch, 10-inch drones, completely assembled. So basically, these things are arrived to your door. You have to, assemble the arms itself. But programming is already complete, and I think they retail for about $260, depending on what model you're going to get, if it's going to be analog or digital. But that's the reality: is for less than $300, I have a drone that can carry a decent sized payload for a prolonged period of time. Whereas the military, I think right now, they're looking at procurement standards around, $1,200, $1,500 for like their FPV kit, which, I mean, just do a cost analysis. We're definitely not winning the fight there.
Right. Crazy. Well, I kind of want to wrap back around to drones in a little bit, but shifting gears slightly, I was curious about you mentioned it a little bit, Roberts, but the light fighter course that you guys do. And I know that Rance, you've written some books on that concept and different things like that. So I'm curious about how you kind of view that entire concept, how you came up with it, and how you think it applies today.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Light Fighter Manifesto really was just a concept I had because when, growing up, I mean, I was a 90s kid. So, I had, the Anarchist Cookbook. I had, copies of Soldier of Fortune magazine for my dad. Also like in the whole skating realm. So you had like these underground zines. And so what I wanted to do was to create a publication, an underground publication that was completely uncensored, that you control the entire medium, and just to offer basically a platform for members in the community to write whatever they wanted to write. And so the intent behind it was to just bring together like-minded individuals on topics that we feel that are relatively important in this day and age, and to just get that information, that medium out there. I know Volume 1 did pretty well. We definitely generated some buzz. But then when Volume 2 hit, and Roberts can attest to this, I mean, it definitely took off. And because of Volume 2, because of that community response, I was fortunate enough to be invited out to Switzerland to conduct the first light fighter course. And that was a 5-day course out there in Switzerland, which, by the way, I mean, it was absolutely gorgeous. You can't beat, doing shooting and communications and drones, and with the Alps in the back, as your backdrop. And then from there, Robert's like, well, hey, let's take this course stateside. And so our first light fighter course stateside is actually going to be coming up here in a few weeks in May. In Alabama at Steel City Precision. And then based off the success of that and how that turns out, we want to run, the intent would be to run more courses, which we do have one on the books for October. But again, it's not a military course. It's a course that brings like-minded individuals that we utilize commercial off-the-shelf technology and emerging, trends and tactics, and we just put it to use. So this way it allows guys, and again too, and we'll get more, I guess we can jump into what the light fighter course is and what it entails and what's provided, but really just bring yourself, and obviously a capable rifle and ammunition, but for the majority of equipment that you'll be using will be provided, be it radios, drones, some directional finding equipment such as the Kraken SDR, because what we want to do is we want the student to gain exposure with those items for them to then make a conscious decision. Hey, do I buy this radio or do I buy that? Or hey, I took a real interest in software defined radios and spectrum analysis, and I really want to maybe pursue that type of medium. So again, that's kind of what the course entails. It's an opportunity to put a lot of these best practices and off the shelf tech into a training environment. And I think we're very fortunate to be able to run this type of course here in the States.
Yeah,
awesome.
It sounds fantastic. We'd love to come take it. We actually just bought your volume 1 and volume 2 books too, so we're looking forward to checking those out. And they're not here yet, but we'll give them a read as soon as they get here and add them to our library. We got a little library going of must read books. So
and again, with the volumes, I mean, volume 1, volume 2, I'm not a graphics editor. I'm not an editor in general. It's basically receiving articles from the community, from other SMEs, that we all follow, on social media platforms, and then kind of putting together in the publication. But I can assure you, volume 3, it's going to be big, close to 250 pages. It's going to be more like in a cargo pocket type format, so a smaller format. And it's going to be more tutorial based, whereas I know the first 2 volumes were more, kind of skimming the surface on some things. But volume 3 is going to be more of like how to. So I'm excited for it.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Ranger book size.
Yeah, a little bit bigger. I think it's like like a 6x8 or something. But
okay.
You'll see, like when volume 1 was massive, and volume 2 is a little bit smaller. Volume 3 is gonna be even smaller. But then based off of that, if that's a good, if the community likes it, then I'll probably stick with that size and that format.
Cool. Yeah. And I'll, for any listeners that are interested in those, I'll link them in the description, like we usually do. So, so I guess if you want to just get into the whole, light fighter concept, or maybe talking about what you cover in the class is a great way to kind of bracket that out. But, that's kind of the main thing we wanted to get into today. So that'd be great to start getting into those topics.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously so it's a 3-day course. And the first part of instruction is going to be shooting, like the shooting aspect of it. And I'll kind of pass this over to Roberts real quick. Let him kind of cover, because he'll be going over, a pretty thorough rifle setup and a shot process class. And then he can pass it back to me for some of the other stuff.
Okay.
So obviously, with this being a light fighter course, it's going to be pretty heavy on field application of marksmanship. And this isn't a precision rifle level 1 course. We're expecting that people are coming to this course with already a pretty thorough understanding of basic rifle mechanics, basic rifle marksmanship skills. And so we'll do a kind of a once over the world on the shot process and confirm people's data, things like that. Be able to make sure that we want to make sure that they'll be able to shoot out to distance with their rifles. But then we're going to get pretty heavy into positional shooting because that is the type of shooting that they're going to have to do in this course. So there'll be a lot of drills, a lot of positional shooting, and things of that nature. How to employ their rifle in the manner that a light fighter would have to do.
Okay. Is it mainly, are you mainly talking like kind of DMR style setups, or are we talking like full precision bolt gun setups, like, or everything in between?
Yeah, so it's kind of everything. There is no specific rifle that you have to have for this course. That's a common question that we get from a lot of guys. So, our biggest requirement is just that your rifle can group under 2 inches, and that you have a optic that is adjustable in order to engage targets at distance. So adjustable turrets with some type of reticle that has subtensions and milling type reticle, not like a BDC type reticle. Yeah. Because you will have to make intermediate to long range target engagements. Now, there isn't necessarily a test in the sense that like you have to shoot to the X, Y, and Z distance. That's some people are getting wrapped around the axle of that. Like, okay, do I need to bring my 1,000-yard gun or do I need to bring my 800-yard gun? Or, and it's like, hey guys, like calm down. This isn't a precision rifle course. And so bring the rifle that you feel the most comfortable on. Bring the rifle that can make that you feel like carrying, bring the rifle, I wouldn't bring like a gun that I'd shoot ELR with, but I also wouldn't bring the gun that, I want to just fold up and throw underneath the seat in the back of my truck, like with the red dot on it. So, something that, I guess DMR is a good, maybe kind of explanation, but, if I chose a gun, I guess, I'd have low to medium power magnification range, and it'd be a semi-auto, I guess, but I mean that's not a requirement. So
right.
Like I don't want people who are going to bring bolt actions with 25 power scopes to think that they're not at home, because they absolutely would be. A sniper team in the United States military carries a semi-auto 308, and now they carry a bolt action 300 Norma. So both of those rifles are carried by the same team. I think you could bring either one of them to this course and be successful.
Okay.
I think you could also bring us, an 18-inch 5.56 with a, 3-18 and be successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can bring my Mark 12.
and then beyond that and stuff. So yeah, I mean, as far as bringing the rifle, again, the place that we're training at, Steel City Precision, it's a very terrain centric type atmosphere. So like Robert's alluded to, you're doing a lot of positional shooting engagements. Distance wise, again, your closest targets will be roughly 250 yards. Farthest target, now we can get out to 2,400 yards. Again, hey, if guys want to take that chance, it's fine. And maybe that's part of the practical exam or the collex on the third day. We'll see. Maybe we're not engaging with the rifle, so to speak. Maybe it's going to be a payload delivery from a drone. Who knows? Just to kind of give a little bit, mysteriousness to it. But yeah. But again, in regards to shooting aspect, though, I think one thing that is lacking amongst other shooting courses is building up that team communication. And that's something that we're trying to focus on too. So day one is kind of like, the universal approach. We'll do our grouping, zeroing, data confirmation. We'll do a range estimation, and win practical. And then we'll start getting into team communication and target detection. And I think by day two, we're hoping to then move into 2-man teams, working on that team communication, both with verbal and over voice communication with radios. And then in preparation, by the end of day two, we're running as a 4-man, 5-man team, whereas we have a shooter-shooter scenario with a team commander / spotter, and then you'll have a drone team in the rear working in conjunction with that team. So by the end of day two, you have almost like the full package getting ready or going into the collex for that final day. So also something that we'll do too, and again, this was first kind of introduced with the Scout Snipers back in Norway. I think it was maybe a few years ago, where Scout Snipers start bringing along EW teams for first SIGINT type aspect, to do a directional find onto a potential target, and then to direct those snipers onto the objective or onto that target to either, collect information or eliminate that threat. And so something that we'll be doing too at the course is using directional finding techniques, which are, your typical, like fox hunting, so to speak, using the Kraken SDR, and also working that into the shooting process as well too. So for example, one of the scenarios will be is you'll have an array of targets out there. Next to your target, you'll have a transceiver, something that you would use for a fox hunt. So one, you'll be doing a wide spectrum scan to identify that specific frequency. Then you'll use directional finding techniques and tools to hone in on that frequency to one, then identify the threat, and then to eliminate it with accurate fire. So again, that's the entire purpose of the light fighter course, is just bringing everything together as one. With shooting, communications, spectrum management, and then drones.
It's pretty cool because I mean it's it's really where I think a lot of the training and education focus in this community needs to go, because it is not one dimensional, and it never really has been. And yeah, you can isolate skills, and there's a lot of great instructors that teach isolated mechanics for, carbine or precision rifle or whatever. Like, obviously you guys work on isolated skills too. But I really like the idea of combining things and really testing the full spectrum approach. And it's a pretty applicable thing too for a lot of what we're seeing now. Even just real world examples like in Ukraine and even Israel. I know it's not as near peer there, obviously, but there's a lot of complications with that as well.
I actually have a question directed toward that. I know with the precision marksmanship side, you guys are expecting that guys have a decent concept on how to do that and to properly do it. And obviously you're doing radio communication, you're doing land navigation, you're flying drones, you're doing SDR work, trying to track down frequencies. So I'm just wondering, should the student have a grasp on every skill, or is it going to be something that, hey, we're not expecting you to really understand this fully because there's not a lot out there right now? So
yep, no, it's completely entry level. Again, the only requirement is coming to the course with a zeroed rifle and being able to employ that rifle, on man-sized targets out to, X distance. In regards to the SDR work, radios, drones, usually what we'll do is we'll do a questionnaire before the course itself. And so we already have a broad idea of the students of their entry level or of their skill level. But yeah, we're not here. It's the intent of the course is to showcase some of the commercial off-the-shelf technology that's currently out there, and then how do we employ it as an everyday citizen within our own community. So again, if you have no clue how to work like an SDR device, like an RTL SDR or a Kraken SDR or a Hack RF, that's fine. I mean, we're here to teach you. So same thing with the radios as well too. So again, it's not a expert level type course. Just come to the course with motivation, with an open mind, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, cool.
So for listeners that like to kind of take homework out of the episode, if you will, I kind of wanted to back up. You brought up EW or electronic warfare and SIGINT, signal intelligence. How important in today's, this is kind of an obvious question or probably an obvious answer, but how important are those skills and having understanding software defined radio and just signal pollution and different things like that in general? How much does that apply to today's warfare?
Well, the reality is everything's transparent. Every signal is a target. Mm-hmm. And so understanding what you're currently broadcasting based off your own individual signal, be it, radio, cell phone, GPS, Bluetooth, being aware of what that signal emits and how it emits and how it's read within the spectrum. Because even, let's say, for example, you're using encryption on your handheld radios, you're still broadcasting a signal. Mm-hmm. So maybe I can't listen in on the conversation though, but I can identify the frequency, and then with my directional finding equipment, I can get a line of bearing to where that transmitter is at, and then with simple resection intersection, I can go ahead and then move into that target area. So just having a broad understanding of emissions control, communicate more with less, understanding pro words, brevity. Using directional type antennas, operating at low power, only communicating when necessary, maybe moving away from voice and moving closer to digital data burst modes. Those are things you have to start taking into play and consideration, be it not only overseas, like say in Ukraine, but also United States as well too. I mean, if you don't think that you're being surveillance, or watched or tracked, I mean, you're wrong. I mean, the thing that we all carry in our pocket on a daily, on the daily, it's like, I mean, it's a legit tracking device, that we all carry with us. And so, definitely if you're planning on doing any type of nefarious things, leave your cell phone home, please. Again, it's just, you have to just be aware that we're so connected in this day and age that the persistent surveillance, from CCTV cameras to, just like it's very, very hard to remain hidden within the spectrum, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, you've referenced the Kraken SDR a couple of times. Have you guys had good success using that piece of equipment?
Yeah, actually, Keenan and myself. So, in preparation of the light fighter course, we like to kind of make sure that all the kits, working and whatnot, and get everything squared away. So, we were actually hunting down a couple transmitters here on the Columbus, Georgia, and Phoenix City, Alabama side of the house. But yeah, it's a phenomenal piece of kit. If you have a consistent transmitter that's broadcasting on a relatively, good power, probably within a matter of minutes, you can definitely get a general line of bearing to where that transmitter's at. And then from there, it's only a matter of getting closer to the objective, maybe kicking up a drone to kind of get a bird's eye perspective of what you see, or maybe doing a cloverleaf, on a ground, RNS type essence. So yeah, the Kraken SDR, for what it retails for, I mean, you can get antennas and the 5 RTL SDR device for about $700, which might seem a lot of money though, but compared to your military grade directional finding equipment, that's a steal. And then the reality is that's commercial off the shelf tech that anyone can buy.
Yep.
So something, food for thought there.
Do you guys power it through are you doing the Raspberry Pi route, or are you processing it some other way?
Yeah, so with the Kraken SDR, it's going to require, I mean, you can run it through a Linux laptop, but how I run it is I have a Raspberry Pi 4B that plugs into the Kraken, and then with an Android device, you just basically log into the Kraken server, and then it pulls up almost like a mapping, screen where it gives you turn by turn directions to the transmitter. It's wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And right now, if you're not familiar with Dragon OS, it's a Linux operating system. There's some really cool things. They're doing a lot of Kraken SDR to TAC server integration. Just definitely not saying beyond what I understand though, but it's really cool to see that the community is starting to design and develop certain programs or certain ins and outs with these off-the-shelf type technologies that we can use. So it's neat.
Yeah. I guess just for a little bit of further education, would you mind breaking down what an SDR kind of generally is for those that are listening to acronyms and they're like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah. So when we say SDR, it's software defined radio. Probably the most popular one is going to be your RTL SDR dongle. I think they're at the version 4 now, V4. It retails for maybe about $40 on Amazon. But what it does, it allows you, so if you were to plug it into your laptop and, obviously have a telescopic type antenna or any type of antenna attaching to the SMA connector, it allows you to see the spectrum. It allows you to see the RF signatures that you can't see with the naked eye. A good program to use with the RTL SDR is going to be SDR++. The reason why I like that program is it's available on all operating systems. So be it Mac OS, Windows, Linux. Again, it's a free piece of software too. So if you just invest $40 into an RTL SDR, you have a decent antenna and you're running SDR++, you're able to now tune in to specific frequencies anywhere from, I believe it's 30 megahertz up to 1 gigahertz within the spectrum itself. Whereas like a hack RF can do 1 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. So you have a wider spectrum you can see. So I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, it's just a way to see signals that that are there, but you can't see with the human eye.
Cool. And in some applications you can see and listen, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So for example, what people would probably do for the first one is to tune into a local FM radio station to be able to listen in on that broadcast itself. And then you have resources online such as Signals Wiki, which is basically a huge database of signals that have been captured. And then with your own little bit of OSINT, type investigation, let's say you came across a transmitter that's broadcasting a very distinct signal, you can then bring it over to Signal Wiki and kind of do your own research and analysis and identify, hey, that's a P25 signal. Hey, it's a DMR type signal. Or hey, that's a military type signal, and it allows you to kind of then start painting the picture of what that transmitter's transmitting. So pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like it's something that everybody should look into, and it's definitely there's a lot of conversation out there on area study. That's been kind of a hot button topic recently, and which is good. It's awesome to get people thinking like that. But what a great tool to add to that.
With the RTL SDR, you can do it's a software program called RTL Power, and you basically tell it to, hey, I want you to monitor, this frequency to this frequency for X amount of hours, and then it'll conduct that spectrum scan, and then it'll give you almost like a readout. So now you have a broad picture of what signals are being employed within your AO or your area of operation. And then from there, you can kind of go in and do more of a thorough analysis.
Crazy. That's awesome. Now talking back about drones slightly a little bit, drones obviously are also operating off of RF signals. So is that something that can get picked up by SDR? Can you pick up? Okay. Absolutely.
So even, one, your drone is transmitting a specific signal. So, be it 5.8 gigahertz, or if you use a hobbyist FPV drone, you're able to kind of modify that. You can run 2.4, 1.3, and so forth. And then even your remote controller. So at the receiving end, your controller is emitting a signal as well too at 2.4 gigahertz, 915, 868, even 433, and so forth. So again, every time you power up an electronic device that is transmitting a signal, that is controlling or communicating with something, you're on the spectrum. So again, even in Ukraine, they do a lot of frequency hopping with say LoRa-based modulation. It reminds me of the early days of GWAT in Iraq, where we would always have to counter the ID threat, right? We do something to counter the threat, they do something to counter our, protective measures, and vice versa. The same thing applies to the drones itself. Is maybe one day I'm flying on 930 megahertz to from my RC link, then Russia decides to jam that frequency. So now I have to then up it or down it on the spectrum just to be able to get something through. So it's crazy, but yeah, everything that you transmit, everything it's broadcasting a signal. So just be aware of it.
That's crazy. So is that how they're getting away with? Because I know early in the war, you saw a lot of trends of, drones were being used like crazy, pretty much right at the beginning. But they were going out and recovering a landed drone, and then they were getting triangulated, and fire missions were being put on them. And now it seems like that's not as effective anymore. Is that because of that hopping, or?
Well, it's because of the hopping itself, though. But they're also creating distance and depth from the front lines to where that drone operator's at. So by using directional type antennas, nowadays in the analog side of the house, you have VTXs, so video transmitters that can broadcast up to 10 watts. I think one company that makes it is AX3. They sell 10 watt VTX transmitters for maybe a few $100, probably even less than that. So again, it kind of goes back to the old hobbyist trend of long range FPV flying. You had guys on analog systems flying for 60, 70, 100 kilometers in flight. So as long as you have no obstruction within inside your Frenzel zone, which is basically like a football type, oval type shape, area. Whereas as long as you have no obstruction inside there, you have a nice clear line of sight, because it is a line of sight system. You can fly pretty far. And at that point in time, it just comes to battery, what type of battery you're going to be using, consumption. And you got to think too, for an FPV drone, it's a one-way ticket. You ain't coming back. It's taken off with a specific payload. It's going to fly for X distance and then detonate on target.
Man, I didn't realize that we were talking those kinds of distances. That paints a better picture for sure.
Because you got to think with drones, it's line of sight, you know what I'm saying? Because you're operating in the higher UHF spectrum. So again, as long as you have no obstruction between yourself and the target, or what they use a lot in Ukraine is repeaters or relay stations. Mm-hmm. Even at the light fighter course, we'll be setting up a demonstration where we'll have a directional type antenna, a VTX running 1.3 gigahertz on a tripod mast, 15, 20 feet, up in the air, but it's going to be away from the hide site itself, because we'll be using a directional type antenna from the transmitter or from the receiver to the actual team that's operating it. So, you're kind of creating that space. So that way, if, they were to pinpoint where that transmitting location is coming from, let's say they mortar it or whatever, that's fine. They'll destroy it, but the personnel that are operating the actual craft will still be safe. So yeah, it's crazy. And again, it's always a tick for tat. kind of like a cat and mouse game between the Russians and Ukrainians right now in regards to drones.
Yeah, I was curious about some of the anti-drone stuff a little bit too, because we've been really heavily kind of researching it recently, because our last episode we actually talked about some lessons in Ukraine and stuff just based on information out there, and kind of hinged off that Grantham video that came out, and it kind of spurred on some more of that. Hey, let's look into the modern fight. But I was curious. It looks like some of the Russian armor is using some kind of signal jamming, because you can see a lot of times those FPV drones will lose signal on their way to the target. And I'm guessing that's something similar to like the US's Duke system, some kind of a signal jamming.
Well, I mean, think about jamming is simply you and I were having a conversation. I'm talking in a very soft tone and you start yelling, or you start, increasing your volume within your voice.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to start kind of blocking or, downing my system itself or my voice too. So yeah, that's all it is. I mean, when it comes to jamming, I mean, increasing power on a very specific frequency or a frequency band is going to distort the signal that I have currently connected from myself to the drone. And then at that point in time, they're going to lose control of the craft, and usually it crashes.
Okay. So it has been effective then. I didn't know if it was just those things have too much speed and they just power through that. And
no, but the thing is like you can't jam the entire spectrum. And again, even for jam, right? If you're to stand like on top of a hill and you're screaming at the top of your lungs, the closer I am to you, the louder you are. But the further I get away, the less I can hear you, right? The less effect your voice is going to have, or the less effect that jammer is going to have. So what they'll do is they'll kind of do like a layered approach, or at least on the Ukrainian side of the house is, one, they'll kind of test the waters and see what signals are being jammed, maybe with that forward element drone, maybe just a tester, right? So maybe my first drone, I'm flying out at say, 5.8 gigahertz for video feed. I get closer to the objective, and then I start, having that jamming sequence, and I kind of lose control. So it kind of tells me, hey, they're probably jamming that 5.8 spectrum. So now I'll get another drone with like 1.3 gigahertz. I'll fly it out and I'll see if that can kind of penetrate that airspace, so to speak, to see if I can get something through. So it kind of like a layered approach to countering that threat,
so there's
or at least seeing what the enemy is using.
Okay.
I mean, if they're using jammers and they're broadcasting a lot of power on that spectrum analyzer, right? You're gonna be able to see that, being emitted and stuff. Though, then from there you can kind of make a conscious decision of how you want to approach this mission.
Okay. Is that that kind of two-pronged approach pretty standard now, where you've got basically your VTOL style, which is going to go up and do your reconnaissance, and then you basically run your fire missions with the FPV drones?
Yep. So basically it's a hunt kill team. So the hunt aspect of it is going to be your DJI or any drone system that has, a high grade optical camera, probably running, both daytime and thermal control. And again, that drone's going to be kind of, the elevated one, 500 feet up in the air, just kind of getting the broad picture of the battlefield itself. And then once they PID a potential target, either by the drone or maybe even like a ground level perspective from say like an RNS team, then that's where that kill team, the FPV drone, will then get spun up, and then they'll fly those drones with the payloads into the target. So
sick.
So and again, that's something that we'll be using too at the course as well, is just kind of showing like that overlaid method of, getting something high in the air, getting that broad, spectrum of the battlefield, pinpointing a specific target, and then that kill team then flies out and neutralizes the threat.
Yeah. So, kind of with that whole light fighter mentality, obviously precision marksmanship and having a good grasp on that's a huge part of that. Would you say that you're, how do I word this? Would you say that that's more of a contingency or like a defensive measure, or like so you can break contact, or should you be able to kind of push in and neutralize threats like that, or are we focused more on that drone warfare from that kind of role?
I mean, I think there is always going to be like an offensive defensive approach to it.
Okay.
Again, it just depends on your mission set. I mean, what you're trying to see. I mean, what we see right now in Ukraine is, really they're kind of fighting more of a defensive battle, right? Everyone's kind of trying to hold the ground that they currently have.
Mm-hmm.
So like no one's really gaining any ground, so to speak. But I think as like the light fighter concept, and the whole purpose of that is it's a self-reliant team, right? You're kind of, you're away from fixed lines of communication. So and you're trying to operate kind of under the radar, maybe behind enemy lines to an extent. So again, I think with that type of philosophy or that type of mentality, it's going to be get in, do what you need to do, and then get out.
Okay. So probably very, well, I guess there's probably a lot of different variables, but that kind of sabotage, harassment, guerrilla warfare style approach.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So obviously you guys talked about that you in the class you go over the marksmanship, comms, drones. It also sounds like you guys talk about entry methods and different things like that.
So not for the light fighter course itself.
Okay.
But and Roberts can kind of jump on this because CR2, we've done work before with cloaked entry. So Marcus and his wife up there in North Carolina, they run.
Awesome.
I mean, if you want anything in regards to covert entry, those are the guys and gal to see. But what we're hoping for though is a collaboration down the road where we, because I know they have like a 3-day advanced covert entry course. Yep. It'd be nice to kind of combine the light fighter aspect with the covert entry course on the advanced side of the house and make something happen. I know I was up there a few months ago for the community day out there in South Carolina. That was a huge success, and hopefully we're kind of making that a reoccurring theme. But in regards to like covert entry type techniques, I mean, I know like Roberts, he has, a little bit of background in that because he's a CRC graduate. But again, that's something that we're not going to be really covering in the course. That might just be a discussion, maybe, on the sideline, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any specific plans to discuss that. And where we're training this course at, there's not really the ability to facilitate that here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's awesome that you kind of have worked with Marcus over there. We actually took his online class, which was cool because I was thinking like, really? Like how are we going to learn how to pick locks on a Zoom call? But we did, man. We were punching open blocks and stuff, and it was awesome.
Those guys were amazing. So yeah. Again, I think in the future, I think that's like kind of like what we're seeing. Like we're seeing these courses because again, the light fighter course is not the only course that's out there. I know, like Wyoming Survival, he does a phenomenal communication course. There's a lot of guys that we all probably follow on Instagram that are running some phenomenal courses. And which I think is amazing because it shouldn't just be cornered in one particular market. I mean, I encourage people to check out different courses. I know I've done quite a few courses on my own pocket for like Mojave Repeater, right? Alex and the guys out there, they're awesome dudes. And in reality, it's like those are the true SMEs of radios. I mean, that's his background. That was his background in the Marine Corps. And again, for our course, we're just trying to adopt some of the things that we learned along the way, be it in our Army careers or the courses that we've attended. And then just trying to find ways to kind of blend it because that's something that I didn't see was, I want to do a communication course, but with some shooting. I want to do a communications course, but using drones and shooting. And so that's where the light fighter course came from.
Yeah. It sounds like a blast. I mean,
I
don't think there's a course out there that's combining all of those elements as far as that I know of besides your course.
I mean, I think, like Darcy and stuff, I mean, they do a phenomenal job down there, but I think they also have a different clientele. And again, to reiterate, this course, the light fire course, is not a military course. Mm-hmm. We're not like, it's for the everyday citizen, that wants to learn about these emerging technologies and how to employ these technologies, in difficult type terrain. I mean, Steel City Precision out there in Alabama, when the students arrive and they kind of see the lay of the land, it's a phenomenal training facility that offers, just a ton of potential. So in regards for shooting aspect, it's going to challenge you, be it with target detection, trying to find these targets, but then also, with the factor of, determining a range to that target and making a good, educated win call. Oh, and then by the way, you get to communicate now what you see or what you do over the net to an adjacent team that is looking at that same target, but from a completely different angle. So you can kind of see the complexity of what's going to come about as we progress through each day. But I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds awesome. Do you think kind of maybe not course specific, but kind of looking at the concept as a whole, do you think it's a good kind of mix of mentalities for kind of those that are out there, maybe labeling themselves as the modern Minuteman, or just a prepared citizen, and they're really interested in pursuing some of these things? Again, not from a military perspective, but just they want to be capable and able to protect their communities. Are these kind of the ways to?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have a responsibility, be it as a man or a woman, be it as a husband, father, mother, like wife, just to protect your homestead, to understand, what's out there. I mean, I think we've all seen the riots from years ago and how that kind of caused a huge uproar in major metropolitan cities. We just don't know. Like, the future is such an unknown. We don't know what to expect. Be it natural disaster, where that's a great place for communications, right? Being able to establish communications, being able to get some type of form of communication up online, without using current infrastructure, and that's where HF comes into play, right? I mean, I'm not using man-made infrastructure. I'm using what God gave us, So just being, but knowing how to employ it. Could you get an HF rig up and establish, data modes or voice communications within a regional area? And I think another good channel to follow is like Tech Prepper on YouTube. I think that's exactly his mentality of where he sees communications. And I encourage everyone to kind of maybe go over there and give him a look and a listen. Okay. But yeah, so again, it's not so much like, we're just trying to, defend our rights and land. It's just about being ready, being prepared for the unknown.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these skills cover a wide variety of possibilities too. It's not just the British are coming mentality. It's kind of natural disasters, search and rescue. I think there's a lot that this dovetails into, which is a more practical approach in my opinion. Did you? Oh, sorry. I thought you were about to say something.
I'm saying, and Roberts can probably to attest this, but even the hunting aspect, right? What do you do for hunting, Roberts?
Sorry, I muted myself. In reference to what exactly?
For like hunting, how are these skills applicable to say on the hunt, so to speak? I know you just had a recent hunting trip.
Yeah,
out west.
Well, specifically. Well, for one, we actually were communicating over mountains with our with our hunting party, because we were split up, and we were hunting elk. So it's not exactly an animal that you're going to move out by yourself. And so, after we had grounded an animal, having to be able to communicate to the guys that were hunting, across a terrain feature or two from where you're at, being able to communicate to them to let them know, like, hey, I've got an animal down and now I need help moving this thing. Had one of us been injured, being able to communicate to each other and let them know, like, hey, I need support in order to get, myself or maybe the guy who I'm with out of here, or, even a vehicle down for that matter. So I think that communications aspect is really important. Then obviously in the precision marksmanship, of course, I hunted in the mountains, and it afforded us to be able to make some pretty long range shots. It also meant that I only had an animal that came into sight at a long range. And so, needing to be able to make a precision shot over long distance was very important for me. And so, I think all these skill sets are very applicable to people outside of the military, to outside of law enforcement, even outside of necessarily people who are even all that concerned with being prepared, for the shit hit the fan situation. These are real world skills.
Yep.
I think everybody should be prepared for, those kind of situations, but these are real world tangible skills that people are probably using on a regular day-to-day basis. They just don't really think about it. That cell phone that, we were talking about tracking you, that is just a communication device. It's a complicated communication device, but it's working on the electromagnetic spectrum, just in a different part of it than the radios that we're going to be using in our course, or the radios that we used when I was hunting. Right, it's essentially a very fancy radio, essentially, that can transmit a lot of data and a lot of technical information. So understanding how these things work is really important, and then you always run into those situations like we had a few months ago where, there was a solar flare that only knocked off certain parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, supposedly.
Yeah.
Right. But, it knocked down, AT&T's network. And so it's like, what would you do in those situations where you still needed to communicate with people? Apparently our Wi-Fi still worked. Kind of crazy how that worked out, but we still had we had to communicate across a different part of the network. And so using these skill sets, understanding these skill sets is really important in courses like this, not just because obviously we're running it or we're teaching it, but courses like this can reinforce those real world skill sets.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and you kind of leaned into that. So for those that don't know, Chris Roberts came on the podcast several episodes ago to talk more specifically about precision rifle shooting and different things like that. And you touched pretty frequently on just practical, fundamental things that, and improvements you've seen in like the hunting community and stuff like that. Whereas in the old days, it was like, I can shoot MOA of plate at, at 100 yards or whatever, and it was not a lot of the data was applied to it and different things like that. And not to put you on the spot too much, but I guess if you wanted to throw out something that you think modern shooters could work on today, in kind of from that perspective, what's something you would say?
Get off your stomach.
Nice.
Yeah, get off your stomach. I mean, outside of zeroing your rifle, there's very, very little application for shooting laying on the ground. I mean, I can think of an endless number of scenarios where shooting on the ground is not a realistic way to do things. We hunt out of blinds, we set our rifle, we support our rifle with a tree, with a rock, with a hunting blind, with a tripod, with a shooting stick. We have to shoot uphill, we have to shoot downhill, we have to shoot, across, or we had to shoot over tall grass, over brush. We had to do all these different kind of weird shooting scenarios, and they all infringe on our ability to shoot from the prone. And so, I mean, zero in the prone if that's what you have to do, and then get the hell off your stomach, because that is not how you're going to take real world shots. It just almost never is. I mean, I can tell you right now that having deployed 5 times and spent 60 months downrange, the amount of times that I bounded and took shots in the prone were very, very, very seldom. Almost every time I shot at anybody, it was with my weapon supported by something else. And it just wasn't never the earth. Unless you want to include a berm, that I set it on. And so, get off your stomach. That would be my biggest thing. Learn how to shoot from those positions that wouldn't necessarily be natural to you. Let them become natural, because if you do that and you can make that natural and make yourself be able to shoot from those positions as well as you can from the prone, you're going to be far more effective in all those, kind of situations that you've envisioned yourself in.
Yeah. Yeah. Up here in Alaska, during the winter, you can't really shoot in the prone. It doesn't really work. So
no, you'll be, you would be swimming, but you'd be, I don't know what the hell you call it, but
you're in a body of water technically. So maybe it is swimming. I don't know.
Yeah. Depending on what you're wearing, your feet are up in the air and your face is down, because if you have snowshoes on, it doesn't work that great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so definitely learn how to shoot from a knee or from standing, and I would agree with that heavily.
Yeah, Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, just listening to Frank's podcast, him and Chris Way were on there talking about the course that they just taught this last weekend. And they have a super heavy emphasis in their first day about tripod shooting. So that's not our approach for our precision rifle courses. We don't specifically focus in on tripods, but we have a heavy focus on positional shooting, and it wouldn't matter if it's a tripod or a barricade or a rock. It's positional shooting is positional shooting. The principles apply the same.
Yeah. Kind of, I guess piggybacking on that, what do you guys think about having a good understanding of like sustainment skills, and just being more comfortable operating in rougher environments? How much does that kind of tie in, you think, to this whole concept?
Oh, well, I think that these guys are going to be very uncomfortable very quickly.
Nice.
For one, it's going to be May in Alabama. That's going to be uncomfortable enough as it is. And then, what we're going to ask them to do isn't necessarily physically grueling, but I mean, it's not laying in the prone on a flat range. It's moving and communicating and moving and shooting. So, they're going to actually have to get out and apply those skill sets.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, in regards to sustainment, survivability. Again, the course. I mean, we're only given 3 days,
right,
to teach a wide array of topics. But I definitely encourage personnel to seek out those courses. And again, I mean, CR2, we're not really that's not our forte. But there's already some good courses out there that do it. I know the Tusk course down there at Darcy is a phenomenal course, and I encourage you guys and gals to check that out. But
yeah, it's kind of cool. We're in a pretty unique era of training and courses and stuff where I feel like a lot of these are kind of like unofficial parts to each other. Like you could take your guys' course and it's like nice, and then you could go take the Tusk course, sweet, and then go take whatever.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, it's how it should be. I mean, it's not even like, even though I'm in CR2. I mean, I still go to other people's courses.
Oh yeah.
It's one is just because I want to learn. I mean, and again, if I don't know something, then I'm going to seek out that guidance and that mentorship from someone else. So I think it's important to have an open mind. And yeah, if a course pops up on your social media feed, it kind of piques your interest, and it's reasonably priced, go for it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still going to go out there and gain an experience. You're going to make some new friends. You're going to meet people that are like-minded, like yourself. And that's what builds that community, that light fighter community. So that way we can, rely not just on ourselves, but like on each other.
Yeah. One other question I had, I know that after that we'll probably kind of wrap up because I know you guys got a schedule you got to stick to. As far as, and this can be course applicable or just to the concept, what's a good team structure for that kind of light fighter role generally?
So for our course, based off the number of students that we have, we're going to be kind of utilizing more of like a scout platoon type aspect, right? So typically in a scout platoon, you have a 6-man scout section. How I would run it, and how these guys will be running it here in a few weeks, is you're going to have your overall like team commander, like your ATL. He's going to be basically in charge of the entire section of the entire team. Then you're going to have your shooter, so your primary shooter, alternate shooter. One guy would also be acting as like point man, compass man. Then you're going to have your RTO, and then you're going to have like your EW SIGINT type specialist. So that way you're able to cover, and also your drone operator as well too. I'll even out for 6. But that way you're able to cover the entire spectrum with very unique skill sets. But each person on that team, or a single person on that team, can employ it. So it's almost like how like ODAs run their teams, right? You have a team sergeant, you have a weapon specialist, you have your medic, you have your 18 Echo, your communication specialist. the same principle applies. Is like, you can't all just be like, oh, we're all just really good shooters, but no one knows how to operate a drone or, communicate over the net or to establish, a field expedient antenna to get an HF shot out there. So what we're going to try to give these guys is the tools to be able to kind of assemble a team and then go out during the call X and conduct a mission utilizing all those assets. So it should be pretty fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a blast. We definitely want to try to take it as soon as we can. It's a long journey to go from Alaska pretty much anywhere, but we try because I think it's important to go train and learn from other people. So, where can people find you guys? Oh, did you have something?
Well, I was just gonna say our last course in Colorado, which was just a few weeks ago. There was a gentleman from Alaska in it, so
so we have no excuse, is what you're saying.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
No, man. It's
awesome.
It's tough. I mean, I haven't made it up there either. So who am I kidding? So best way to find us, obviously the CR2 supply cage is where all the registration for courses and things like that are. Social media, as lame as it is, that's still the number one place to find out information and current to-dos. And then yeah, I mean, we're hopping and popping all over the place. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, where all the cool kids are. We're there. At least trying to be cool.
Sweet.
You want to talk about High TV too? With
yeah, that's a big one, man. I should probably start talking about that more. So, speaking of online training with Marcus, so a big thing that we're working on delving into is High TV. So with High TV, we'll have online training online training courses that people will be able to enroll and take. So you can be able to go on sniperside.com, click on the High TV tab, and then there's 3 basic channels there. You have one for low light, or I forget exactly what Frank calls his. You'll have one for riflecraft, and then you have one for CR2. When you get there, you can enroll in training. There will be some free training there, basic, high level stuff. And then there will be actual paid training that you can take, subscribe to, things like that. And we'll do everything. We're going to have all kinds of stuff on there, from precision rifle training to drone and communication training. We're even going to have some fieldcraft related stuff. Ruben's going to be jumping in on this and giving us some of that good fieldcraft knowledge that he's been building over the years. So people will be able to get on there. It's going to be just like taking a college class, basically. Get on there.
That's awesome.
Tutorials, quizzes, tests, and at the end, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool platform, and I think it's going to provide a pretty good resource to people, especially for guys like you that maybe can't come all the way down to the lower 48 for every class,
right.
But want to be able to get some of that good knowledge.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. That's we'll definitely have that in the description. We'll make it easy on everybody. So all the links to CR2 will be there. Make sure to link the volumes too of the Light Fighter Manifesto, and then your guys' Light Fighter course. If you're in the area and you can go take their course, highly, highly recommend it. These guys both know what they're talking about. True professionals in the field. So jump in there. We hope to do it as soon as the stars align.
Maybe October. Maybe the October class will.
Yeah. So October's still got some slots. We do have some precision rifle stuff coming up too this year. There's still a couple classes left. We'll be in Little Rock, Arkansas, in June, and then right after that, also in June, we'll be out in California. So there's some opportunities there too. And then we will be running our mountain rifleman course. It's already on the schedule for March of next year.
Cool. What part of California are you going to be in?
It's the Pala shooting range, which is in Pala, California. So it's like south.
Okay.
Southern California. Yeah. Cool. SoCal, however they call it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, greatly appreciate both of you guys coming on, especially with how busy you both are, making the time and making it happen. We've been kind of trying to make it happen for a little bit. So we're thankful that we got to sit down and talk with both of you. And kind of obviously a lot of this, it's just brushing the surface, but the course would be illuminating, I'm sure, for anybody. And just huge thanks for making the time again.
Yeah, appreciate having us on.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yep. Take it easy.